Yeah. Hi, can everyone hear me? Great, well, welcome. We're waiting on about a few more people, so just hold tight.
I very much thought Justin was a Smurf whenever I logged on.
Hello.
Hey, Justin.
Not a Smurf, still a human.
Good to see you.
Yeah, how's everybody doing?
Good.
Okay, so my volume is a little low. Can you guys hear me okay?
If you can turn it up a little bit, maybe.
Well, I would just have to talk louder.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
See, let's give it a few more minutes. I expect a few more people to join us.
Okay.
Oh, I see Becky. Hey, Becky. Did y'all get any rain at the nature center, Justin?
Yeah, it was coming down pretty hard earlier today.
Yeah.
Which kind of surprising because it's sort of been threatening to rain. The forecast has said rain for like the last week and a half, and
Right.
then it seems like not a whole lot has come of it. And then I guess it all came today. So.
Yeah, we had quite a bit here inside the loop.
So how many people do we have RSVP?
We had about 17, so we have about 10 right now. We can go ahead and get started. It's a couple minutes after. At least do welcome. So welcome everyone to this month's episode of BLC Live. My name is Melissa Carter. I am the Community Relations Manager for Bayou Lane Conservancy. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Everybody should be muted right now. If you have any questions, there's an option in the comments box, and you can ask questions, and then at the end I will ask Justin. I'll share your questions, or if it's something that seems timely at the moment, we can always kind of interject and ask our questions then, but make sure you use the comments box. And let's see, we are recording, just as a heads up. So this episode, we are joined with our partners with Montgomery County Precinct 3 and the Spring Creek Greenway Nature Center. The Nature Center, they partner with us to preserve land where a lot of animals live. The Nature Center also is home to many of these animals as well. They have an education exhibit, very family friendly. They actually had just opened pretty recently. For the start of the pandemic, there was some flooding after Harvey, so they recently opened, which is why we're bringing this tour to you guys. I personally have not seen it since it's reopened, so I'm really excited about it. And Justin's going to lead us on this tour. He's the director of the Nature Center. And take it over, Justin. Thank you for being here with us.
Of course. So I just want to point out we are doing social distancing here at the Nature Center, and everyone is required to wear a mask while they're here. However, for the ease of being able to be understood, while there's no one here in the Nature Center right now, I am going to remove my mask, but rest assured, if anyone comes in or if I have to be in close proximity with a member of my staff, I will put the mask back on. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm not taking coronavirus seriously. We take it very seriously here at the Nature Center, but I'm not going to be able to do this for the whole time. So give me just a second while I get resituated here. Just put this in my back pocket, and we will be ready to go. All right, that's better. I'd like to virtually welcome you to the Nature Center. And as Melissa said, we have done some redecorating and some remodeling. And so I'm happy to show that off and share that with you today. So we're going to do a quick little pan around. Actually, we're going to come over here to the entrance, so you'll kind of get an idea of what it looks like when you walk in for the first time. I'm sorry in advance if any of you get dizzy. So here you can see, for any of you who have been here in the past, the layout is fairly similar to the way it was before. You may notice a few changes.
Hey, Justin?
Yes.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick to make a recommendation for those viewing this Zoom. If you have the Zoom in gallery view, where every video is the same percentage of your screen, I recommend switching to speaker view, and that way you can see Justin's screen much better. It'll take up the majority of your screen. And with that, I'll shut up. Please continue.
No, excellent point. Well taken. Thank you. Okay, so for those who are just now switching to speaker view, here again is the view of our lovely lobby. And so we'll kind of go around and just look at some of the features that we have that are available for people to use when they arrive. So the first thing you see when you walk in is our interactive space. So over here we have some display cases with some natural objects that have been found both locally and that we've brought in or that have been donated. So we have a lovely mineral display here. This is one of my favorites. I've always been sort of an amateur admirer of different rocks and minerals, so I had a lot of fun putting this one together. And then over here, we've got one that's showcasing some different trees that we have in the area, and we're actually in the process of revamping this one. We think we can do something a little more exciting with it. But you can see here we have our Beaver Chewed Log, which was actually found here on the property. We used to have some beavers that live in the pond over here on the preserve. And then also a prickly ash tree, which is a very interesting looking plant unto itself. Over here, we've got some of our more interactive stuff. Now, normally we have a little bit more on offer, but for the ease of making sure we can clean everything on a regular basis, we've sort of pared it down a little bit. We've got some little acrylic squares with some different insects in various life stages, and then some little castings of paw prints down there on the bottom shelf. I hope I can get that in view there for you. And then here we've got the reading corner. And this is actually a popular little spot. People come in and they kind of look around, but if they have smaller kids, they love coming over here. And normally we would have some little toys available to play with too, but they love sitting down and just reading books with their parents or their siblings. And so we try to keep a focus on, nature or, the natural world, that kind of thing. And kids really enjoy spending a lot of time over here. I mean, they'll sit over here and read for like 30, 45 minutes, which I think is fantastic because I've always loved reading.
Sorry, can I interrupt you? Is the Nature Center currently open right now for families to visit?
Yes, we are open. And so we've had some visitors. We had a lot of visitors right when we first reopened, but it's kind of fallen off, now that infection rates are kind of rising. But we still do get people in, and people are welcome to come as long as they're properly social distancing.
Sure.
And then over here we have some actual hands-on stuff. So we've got some bones and shells and antlers and things. And we feel that the tactile experience is very important with making a connection to the concepts that we talk about, and also just to form an appreciation of the natural world. And we've got spares of this stuff, so if somebody drops it, which these shells have been dropped and glued back together a few times, so we're not really worried about breaking anything irreplaceable. Let's see. So if we come over this way, we've got our interactive touchscreen. So right now we've got some information about local species, and it's kind of geared towards kids, but I find adults over here kind of browsing it also. But you can learn about a select few of the local species that we have. You just pick an animal and you can read about its behavior and its diet and its lifespan, and you got some fun facts down there, and you can look at different pictures of the animals. And as time permits, we add more content to this, and hopefully we can expand into things like different plants and insects as well. So moving here into the main lobby, not a whole lot going on. It's mostly like a staging space for events that we put on, but we do have our main interactive touchscreen, which you can see here. It actually has an interactive trail map, which is much better than just, you know, a paper poster that you have to squint to see all the details on. So you can actually zoom in like you would, like it was on a phone or a tablet. You can move it around. We've got little waypoints that show you different points of interest. So we got a butterfly garden over here you can look at. You can see that we have a scenic overlook over here at the end of Beckenpaw Path that you can go to. So I think people are able to find new places to go a lot more easier because we can actually stand here, zoom in, show them where to go, show them what path to take, or they can browse it at their leisure. And when we are normally doing events, we have them listed here on our upcoming events board. It's noticeably empty right now because we're not doing a whole lot. Because again, thank you, coronavirus. So moving along, we've got our stuffed American alligator, courtesy of Commissioner James Nowak. He found it and he had it mounted for us, and he donated it to the Nature Center, and we created this nice little display. So that was the first alligator that we ever acquired. Fortunately, we've been able to acquire some more alligators. These are actually alive, and so we're going to move on into our animal room. So I'll give you guys sort of a nice view here. Now, a number of these animals are native. Not all of them were found specifically here. And we do have some that are not native. And I'll talk about the ones that are not native as we move past. So as I hinted at before, we've got our alligator tank. And they're actually wanting to play hide and seek right now. So I'm not sure if you're really able to see them. Let's see if I can get you. Oh, we went back below the water. So here we go. Yeah. Excuse me. They're a little shy right now because they just had their tank cleaned and they were pulled out, and they don't really like being pulled out too much. So they're kind of wary of people at the moment. But usually once they calm down, they're actually sunning themselves up like on a rock right there or on one of the logs. So their names are Cypress and Tupelo. And they came to us from the Brazos Bend State Park. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with them, but they have a whole alligator rearing program. So they're actually able to breed alligators and give us the hatchlings, and we're able to raise them until they get to be about, I think, 3 years old. And then at that point, they kind of get a little too large for this tank. So we send them back, and then they can send us a couple of new alligators. And they're very feisty, especially when they get to be this size, because now they're aware that they have mouths that can bite and do quite a bit of damage if they wanted to. And so they're not quite as cute and cuddly as they were when they were small. And the hope is once we can get some that we raised from hatchlings, these guys came to us only about a year ago. And so they're already fairly large, and they weren't that sociable when we got them. But hopefully, when we get the next batch, we'll be able to handle them a little more when they're younger, and they can be a little more tame. So moving on to here, we have our pond tank. And it's so named because most of the species we have in here can actually be found in our bluegill pond on the property. So you can kind of see, right now we've got a bluegill floating right there, and then we got this big guy, a largemouth bass. And you know, the name is quite apt because when it's feeding time, he will swallow just about anything that moves. It's actually quite something to watch. So we'll actually feed him some live goldfish, and as soon as they hit the water, boop, he just eats them right up. I mean, there's not even a hesitation about it. And we'll feed them a variety of things. Sometimes we'll do like earthworms. We've got some freeze-dried shrimp that'll eat. And whenever crawfish is in season, we'll actually put some live crawfish in there, and they'll pack them away. I mean, I've seen them eat 4 or 5 crawfish in a row, just swallow them whole. It's really quite something. And we'll see if we can find our other large resident of the pond. Yeah, it looks like she's hiding right now. So the other big thing that we have in here is the Spiny soft-shelled turtle. And she is just not wanting to be sociable. So I can show you a picture of her. So the sign here, you can see Spiny soft-shelled turtle. And the name does apply. It's a very soft, almost like wet, leathery kind of feel to it. If you've ever held a regular turtle and then touched the shell of a soft-shelled turtle, you immediately feel the difference. She's pretty shy. She mostly stays burrowed under the gravel that you can see in there. She'll come out, you know, looking for food. But if she's up above the water and she sees anybody come in, she just like darts down and starts digging down into the ground almost immediately. But she eats mostly stuff from the bottom. Like she won't eat when we put the food in the tank directly. She kind of waits for it to float down. I believe the term is benthic. She's meant to eat stuff like from the bottom of like riverbeds and ponds and all that. So she'll mostly pick up the things that the other fish don't eat. Moving along, we have our owl enclosure, which is actually one of our newer exhibits. Unfortunately, the owl likes to hide most of the day, so you can't really see her. But if you look, there's 2 nest boxes. There's one that has a little hole cut in it up in that top corner. That's actually where she is right now, and I don't think we'll be able to catch a glimpse. But her name is Pepper. She's an eastern screech owl, and they come in 2 different colors. There's a gray and more of like a reddish brown. She's the gray variety. And our resident animal expert, Kirsten, has been working with her since we got her. And so she's kind of slowly learning to trust people, and she's mostly comfortable with Kirsten, but if anybody else is in the room, you know, she's just not sure about that situation yet. So, yeah, we'll give her some time. Hopefully one day she'll be able to come out and say hello to some people without being too stressed out about it. So now we're going to move on to the most prevalent group of animals that we have, which would be snakes. So the first one we have here, you know, pretty run-of-the-mill, but she's still special to us. She's a corn snake. Her name is Maisie. So you can kind of see her back there in the corner, kind of looking around. She's one of our main animal ambassadors. So anytime you want to bring an animal out for people to touch or interact with, or just have out and about so people can see, she is one of them. She's very sweet, very docile. She does well being held for long periods of time. We'll take her off-site to events, and you know, she does really, really well. Like, she doesn't mind people petting her or anything. So she's one of my favorite animals to bring out, just because she has just such a calm, mellow disposition. And she's actually coming to say hello to everybody. Hi, Maisie.
Hello.
Corn snakes can come in a bunch of different colors. That's mostly a result of them being so popular on the pet trade. You might see some, like in the picture here. Let me get the camera lined up. You can see that's sort of like a really bright orange color. You will not find a corn snake in nature that color. That is purely a result of artificial selection in the breeding process. So you can see she's mostly like a gray color with some splotches, and she has a little bit of yellow like on her face and on her neck. But for the most part, she's fairly dull. That's going to be a lot closer to what you would find out in nature as far as coloration goes. They will not be as tame, certainly. So the less colorful the snake, the more colorful the personality in that regard. Moving down below to her downstairs neighbor, I don't know if you can see back there in that back corner, we actually have a cottonmouth. And that is also a native species that is a venomous species. It's also known as a water moccasin. It's much maligned. A lot of people think that it's a very aggressive species, but we really haven't found that to be the case. Most of the time, they'll either kind of freeze and like hope that you don't notice them, or try and slither towards the nearest place of safety, which is usually the closest body of water. And where a lot of people sort of run into trouble is they may be standing between the snake and the closest body of water. So the snake will go towards them, or generally towards them, to try and get to the water. And people think, oh, it's coming after me, it's trying to attack. But I can say with certainty that anyone that has worked here and that has encountered them out in the wild, they've never been attacked by a water moccasin. And one important point that I want to touch on with any snake, but venomous snakes especially, the vast majority of bites that occur when people get bitten is as a result of trying to either move or harm the animal. Whereas if they had just left it alone and walked away or allowed it to pass, more than likely no incident would have occurred. So I can't stress enough that if you find one of these guys or one of their non-venomous cousins out in the wild, just leave them alone. They're not trying to harm you. They really only want to bite you if they think they can eat you, which you're far too large. They cannot eat you. They know that. Or if they think that they're in danger. So more often than not, they will bite in defensive capacity. So moving here next door, we have our second venomous snake. He's going to be a little harder to see. It's a southern copperhead. So I don't know if you guys can see it kind of tucked back there amongst the leaves and the log. I can't see my screen, so somebody give me a shout if they can see the copperhead or not.
I can see him.
Okay, good.
Yeah, move your camera down a little bit. There.
Okay.
Oh, he's in the middle left.
Yeah. So this is one of my favorite snake species, just due to the coloration alone. I mean, it's a gorgeous coppery color with some brown markings that from the side look like little Hershey's Kisses. And in fact, this particular copperhead is named Hershey after that very feature. And then if you can see the eyes, which I don't recommend getting close enough to a copperhead out in the wild to look at its eyes, because that is a very bad position for you to be in. But if it's behind a glass door like this one and it's a safe environment, see if you can look at its eye coloration, because it's actually a very pretty copper color. And they have those slitted eyes that a lot of venomous snakes are known for. So it makes for a very pretty effect. So again, a very docile snake. They're not aggressive. They won't come after you. In fact, their main defensive mechanism is to freeze, because they blend in so well with their environment that they're just going to rely on you not noticing that they're there. And hopefully you'll just pass on by. So again, if you find one, just leave them alone. You'll be okay. Now moving on to our third venomous snake, you can see here that we have an eastern black-tailed rattlesnake. Now this is a very impressive species, not necessarily for size, but for their coloration, their pattern. I think they're a very pretty snake. And you can kind of see the pattern there. You get some black and some gray and some light gray. She likes to curl up underneath this little collection of wood here, so she's kind of hard to see. I don't know that you'll be able to see her head or not. But I recommend looking them up, because they are quite a specimen to behold. Now they are native to regions of Texas and Mexico. They're not found around here. They're really found out farther west, like towards the west side of Austin. In fact, I don't think that they commonly come as far east as Austin. They're probably a little bit farther west than that. But they can be found in Texas, so it satisfies one of our preferences for finding species to have on display, and that's she is native. She was not caught in the wild. She was actually someone's pet for about 10 years before we ever got her. I don't recommend keeping venomous snakes as pets. And as far as venomous snakes go, rattlesnakes are pretty bad. They're not the worst, but they're not great. She is very docile, having been tamed some 10 years ago, so we don't really have too many issues with her. If it were some other rattlesnake, that might be a very different story. Now, the black-tailed rattlesnake is known to have a somewhat mild temperament. So, I mean, you might encounter one in the wild and it may just kind of be chill, but that's still no reason to try and approach one or try and capture one. And I certainly don't recommend them as a personal pet. We've been through the proper handling training. We have very specific protocols set in place for whenever we handle any of our venomous snakes. And so we make sure that we're keeping everybody safe and that we're keeping the animals safe as well. So moving along to something a little less dangerous, we have our Texas rat snake. And he is actually a very, not quite colorful, but sort of brightly colored version. He, I believe, was found out in the wild. I mean, you don't really see a lot of rat snakes on the pet trade. You do see some, but he is wild caught. He's fairly docile. I mean, he does not like people very much, and if he feels like he's in danger, he will strike the glass. So, we don't really handle him too much or have people get too close to him. But this is one of the more common snakes that we'll find in the area. And actually, most of the time when someone takes a picture and says, "What kind of snake is this?" Usually it's going to be a rat snake. Rat snake or copperhead, those are pretty common. A lot of the times you'll see them be a much more darker color out in the wild. Sometimes they can even look almost entirely black. They get fairly large. They get bigger than he is right now. I believe the females get to be a lot larger. You'd have to double check with a snake expert on that. But yeah, so he's sitting here. He's pretty calm for the moment. But when he gets crowded by a bunch of other people, then he starts exhibiting signs of being uncomfortable. So we will move along over here to our plain-bellied water snake. Her name is Lily, and she's actually hiding right here in front of the ledge, just beneath the water bowl. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. But this is the snake that is most often confused for the cottonmouth that we saw before. A lot of people will see one of these and they'll think, "Oh no, that's a cottonmouth. I need to get away from it, or I need to kill it." Again, if you see a snake, just leave it alone. It's probably not going to do anything to you. But you can very easily tell the difference. So if you can see the face there, I don't know if you can see it clearly or not, but you can kind of see there's like a little pattern right there on the lips, just underneath the eyes, and it almost looks like they have teeth. So it kind of looks like a little smile going all the way around the face. And that's the best way to tell the difference between a water snake and a cottonmouth. So moving along, I don't think he's out anymore. We do have a little eastern collared lizard, but it looks like he's taking a nap inside his hide. So we're going to move on to a non-native species. And this, a lot of people probably recognize it. It's a ball python. Her name is Queen Cleopatra. And she was actually a pet that somebody had. They were no longer able to keep her, so they asked if we would take her. And we said yes, because even though she's not native, she is very docile, very tame, and very handleable, and she's very large. And so we actually use her in educational settings to help people become more familiar with and more comfortable with snakes, and especially larger snakes. And she actually does very well. She'll hang out like on your shoulders for quite a long time, and she does fairly well with that. So I do have to apologize. We had some visitors come in, so you might hear them in the background. We don't have small children under our employ, I promise. So we'll move on. This is actually our most popular resident. This is Colonel Honey Dijon Mustard III. She's a bearded dragon. And I've actually got a special treat for you guys because it's feeding time. So I'm going to set the computer down on this table here, and I'm going to feed her some worms, and you guys hopefully will be able to see her eat those. All right, so I'm going to set this down. Sit up. It might be a little far. Actually, do you want to hold this? Yeah. Okay, so my assistant Hannah is going to hold the tablet. Careful,
Sorry.
don't leave the meeting.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. All right, so just so you guys can see what we're feeding her, now you have to tilt it down.
Oh, sorry.
So these are super worms. They're actually the larvae of a kind of beetle. They're very common on the pet trade to use as feeder insects. And they are a personal favorite of Miss Honey Mustard here. So there we go, you can see it a little better. Open the door all the way, tilt it down a little bit. All right, and you're gonna see the ravenous hunger of this monstrous lizard. Look at that, she's vicious. Yeah? Nom, 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 nom. So good. One more. This is her favorite part of the day. This is what she lives for.
This is our favorite part of the day.
She is very, very food motivated, which, to be honest, so am I. And there's your last one. Oh man, so good.
So you only eat 3 a day?
Yeah. So the super worms are high in fat. They're high in protein, but they do have a lot of fat content. So she doesn't eat a whole lot of them, especially now that she's fully grown. So the majority of her diet consists of vegetables. Sorry. No, you guys are fine. Okay, so that is our animal room. It's one of my favorite parts of the building. Hope it's the same for you guys. We'll take a quick peek outside because even though it has been raining, it stopped raining for the moment. So we're going to look at our new back deck area. And hopefully I don't lose the Wi-Fi signal. So I don't know if you guys can see it here. This is all new after Hurricane Harvey. So this deck was constructed. We have some picnic tables. We've got some flower boxes where we put some pollinator plants in. And this has been a really popular spot for people to hang out. Obviously not right now because it's like 100+ degrees most days of the week. But when it's a little nicer out, you know, in the fall and the spring, it's a great place to have a picnic or have a little get together. Properly social distancing right now, of course. And we have a little bit more of it over here. It pretty much got wiped out by the hurricane.
I think we're losing you, Justin.
You guys should come check it out whenever you are able. We've got a couple little avocado trees going here. I think they take about 2 years before you're able to plant them in the ground. So it's a little bit of an investment in time, but hopefully one day we'll have some really nice avocado trees and some great guacamole.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll come back inside here where it's nice and cool. And we're just going to take a quick look out the front door so you guys can see our natural play area and some more of the pollinator plants.
Justin, you're freezing up on us a little bit.
You've got lots of bees. You can see a little, whether a bumblebee or carpenter bee, he won't hold still, I can't tell. But it's very popular with the bees, with the butterflies, with certain moths, and also with hummingbirds. If you just sit inside and look out these windows when the hummingbirds are out, you can see sometimes 4 or 5 of them just flying around, fighting for territory, fighting for nectar. It's pretty neat to watch. We've got some more pollinator plants planted over there.
Hey, Justin?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? We were having some, I think, Wi-Fi issues. You were freezing up on us a little bit. So.
Okay. Yeah, I was just talking about the different pollinators that we get out here. I'll go back inside.
Okay.
Yeah, so
And I think you're muted, Justin.
Melissa, you should be able to unmute. There we go.
Yeah,
yep.
I
Okay.
tried.
How much of that did you hear? Nothing?
Yeah, I can hear you now. We can hear you now.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Did you hear anything about my pollinators that I was talking about?
Just when you came in, I think it muted you somehow.
Okay.
So I don't know if anybody heard.
Okay. I was just talking about the different pollinators that we have. So, you know, hummingbirds, bees, butterflies, we really try to encourage them, you know, through all the plants that we've planted. And then out that way, I don't know if you can see it, we've got a natural play area. We've got plans to expand and add some stuff to it in the future. And the last area that I'll talk about is this large space. I'll just talk about it briefly. So this is our lecture hall or multi-purpose room. Right now, we're not doing a whole lot with it. And it could be that way for quite some time. Just, you know, depending upon how things go. So we're really trying to think about different things that we can do with it. And one of the ideas we touched upon, and this is not anything official at this point, but we've talked about actually turning this into an area for exhibits and for additional animals. So something like this we can actually expand into and have larger enclosures, more elaborate enclosures, and it would actually allow us to keep animals that we otherwise would not have space for. Since it doesn't look like we're going to be doing any kind of big lectures or big group gatherings anytime soon, you know, we think that would probably be a much better use of the space.
Any examples of what those animals might be, Justin?
Sure. So one of the ones that we're looking to get, and it's not native, but it's a huge lizard. It's an Argentinian black and white tegu, which if you haven't seen it, they're about the size of a dog, fully grown. And if you raise them properly, they're about as docile as a dog. So if you just imagine like a big enclosure over there with a nice little pond in it, and maybe a sunbathing area, and just a large dog-sized lizard hanging out in it. I think that'd be pretty cool. It would be a great educational tool because we could bring them around. I mean, basically, you can just let them roam around the building, and they'll surprise you.
Yeah, they're like a big Labrador.
Yeah, pretty much. So that we're also looking at getting some more birds, and not necessarily birds of prey, which those are kind of the cool ones, but there's also some potential with one of our rehab partners of maybe acquiring small songbirds or something that won't be able to be released out into the wild. So we have space in here to do something like that. Now, like I said, this is just, we're kind of brainstorming ideas right now, but it is something that we've talked about in the past. And so, you know, with things being the way they are now, that might be a direction that we decide to move into. So we could have a lot of different exhibits and animal enclosures and everything in here. So that's just sort of a little glimpse into what we could potentially do in the future. And part of that is actually going to be possible thanks to the Bayou Land Conservancy, believe it or not, because as part of the process of placing land under a conservation easement, they have written us a big check. And that check was deposited into our funds, and it's been set up so that it can't be used for anything except for the Nature Center. We've got a lot of big ideas.
That's
and,
awesome.
Yeah, we're looking to really do something pretty awesome with it. So that's a big kudos to you guys.
Well, let me know if you need to measure any of us for our statue.
Sure. Yeah. We'll do. We'll get you to hold the tegu.
What is the timeline if y'all are planning on kind of changing the space up and bringing in live animals? Oh, I think you froze again.
But they're very good for being able to do training. And you can
sorry to interrupt, you froze for about 30 seconds. Can you repeat what you said?
Yeah, nothing official has been decided yet, so we're still in very early preliminary stages of things. So there's not really any kind of timeline to talk about, but there are some things that we could start doing like within the next month. One of the things we're looking to get is some doves, which they're not really exotic or anything, but they're easily trainable. They're great for doing education events, so you can bring them out and like let people watch them, fly around. See them up close, and so that would kind of get us started on newer animals. And something like the tegu that we talked about is something we could get, very easily. And when they're small, you can keep them in a small container for up to 6 months, and then from 6 months to a year old, a little bit larger of a container. And then by the time they reach a year old, we'll have had plenty of time to build a larger enclosure for it in here. So. There's a lot of different things that we can do. And I just think it's a good idea considering this room is really not really being used for much else at the present time.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, so that's about it for the building. As far as the preserve itself goes, we've got a lot of different flora and fauna that through our conservation easement with BLC that we're able to preserve, provide habitat for. Some of my favorite species. We've got, we have an osprey that visits us annually, and there's a tree in the middle of our pond that's on an island that he comes back to every single year, almost like clockwork. And it's just so cool to have a space that he's able to come back to every year. He knows it's going to be there for him, and he's got plenty to eat because there's plenty of fish in the pond, plenty of fish in the creek, and numerous other species that we support. Honestly, every time I go outside, if I'm really paying attention, I find something new. And I think you find that almost anywhere you go in a natural space, but the fact that it's like right outside my office, like I can just walk outside and potentially see something I've never seen before. Like I'll find something, take a picture of it, come back, Google it, find out, I have I think something I found is a golden-headed weevil. If you've never seen that, it's a really cool looking little bug. It almost looks like it's like a white or like a very light mint green color. And it's got just like a little golden patch like on top of its head. I just saw it sitting on a plant. I'm like, I've never seen this before. What kind of alien bug is this? Took a picture of it, looked it up, and that's just the kind of stuff you find out here all the time whenever you're looking. So I mean, every day is just a new learning experience. Every time I go out there.
Justin, are a lot of the animals in the nature center, do y'all find those on the preserve or other places? Where do they come from?
So some of the animals that we have did come from the preserve. We have a little broad-headed skink. I wasn't able to show you because A, he's hiding, and B, we kind of got crowded in there with the kids. But we actually did find him outside, and it's a pretty lucky find because they're mostly arboreal. And when they're not up in the trees, they're usually down, like burrowed under the ground. So it's pretty neat to see him. Let's see, who else? Most of the fish that are in our pond tank came from here, came from our pond. I think, yeah, the 3 box turtles that we have came from out there. And we'll periodically find something. We'll have it on display for, you know, a couple days, and then we'll put it back in the wild, because anytime you keep something long enough that you have to feed it, you're really not supposed to put it back out in the wild, because then, you know, it's used to getting food from a human now,
Right.
and it probably won't be able to fend for itself very well. But we do collect a number of insects and lizards and things that we'll keep temporarily.
Lisa Lynn had a question. Can you list the different pollinator plants you have in your garden, and
Ooh.
what side of the building is it located? For example, south side of the building.
So I can name some of the ones that we have. So the really big one that we have is that firebush. It was the one that had the tiny little cone-shaped red flowers. We have those on the, I guess it would be the north side of the building. We try to have a lot of milkweed, obviously, for the monarch butterflies. We have some of the tropical variety on that north side garden. We have some of the, I forget which ones, it's the yellow variety. I forget which one that's called. We have some of that on the back deck. We also have purple coneflower, I think it's called. Let's see, actually, Carrie would be the one who would know a little bit more about the plants. So if you're interested in the different ones that we have, if you could get your email to Melissa, and she can get that to me, I would be happy to get that information and forward that on to you.
Absolutely. Great. If anybody has other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Yeah. How do you, Lisa asked, how do you name your animals?
So that's actually kind of fun. Sometimes we'll get an animal and like a name will just strike you. Say, okay, this definitely needs to be named this because of its personality or because of how it looks or, you know, something. You just kind of get a feeling like I need to call it this. And if anybody has a problem with that, they can talk to me. So Kirsten picks a lot of our animal names that way. But some of our other animals will actually do like a naming contest on Facebook. So either we'll come up with a few different options and have people vote on it, or we'll take people's suggestions, like we'll make a post saying, hey, you know, suggest some names for this animal, and then we'll take the top few, and then you can do a vote on it. So that's how a few of our animals have been named. That's how our rat snake was named. His name is Linguini, because, you know, Danger Noodle. We also, that's how we named our Copperhead, Hershey. People liked the name Hershey for Hershey's Kisses. And I think our Cottonmouth is named that way as well. His name is Inigo Montoya, because, you know, Cottonmouths look like they're wearing that little mask. So they look like the guy from Princess Bride, even though his name was not Inigo Montoya. It's a bit of a journey, but you get there in the end. Yeah,
Great
so.
movie.
And then one, we actually had the name change. Our Spiny soft-shelled turtle, her name originally was Espinosa, which I think is Spanish for spine or spiny or something. It's a very pretty name. But one of our guys wanted to name her Gamera, which that's a creature from the Godzilla series of films. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but it was basically like a giant turtle. But he was overruled. We named her Espinosa. And then, to personal circumstances, so we renamed the Spiny soft-shelled turtle Gamera in his honor when he left.
Awesome.
Justin, this is Jim Robertson. A couple of questions.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
A little louder if you could.
Yeah. I was just wondering, before the coronavirus, just, you know, what kind of numbers of school groups and kids were you seeing on a weekly basis or anything? Just how heavy the traffic was? And then I guess I also wondered, is your programming pretty much limited to the area right around the nature center there, or do you get out other places on the Greenway as well?
Those are some very good questions. As far as the numbers, so when things are normal, our main bread and butter is doing school field trips. And so, back before Hurricane Harvey, we were doing, during the fall and spring semesters, at least 3 days a week, sometimes 4 days a week, we would be doing field trips, and those would be 100 kids per day. So that's a lot of kids that we would get on a daily and weekly basis. Once Hurricane Harvey hit, obviously that all had to stop because we didn't have a facility to do it. And so we were kind of retooling things, revamping things. We were able to hire on some more staff so that when we reopened after the hurricane, we would start being able to do field trips. And so we reopened late summer last year, and we were going to start doing field trips the spring semester of this year. And the week before we were supposed to do our very first field trip back from Hurricane Harvey, we had to close for coronavirus. So the real answer to your question is we don't do any school field trips. Haven't done them for the last 2 years. But the plan is once we're able to get back to that point, all things being ideal, we have a vaccine, viral transmission is low or non-existent, probably somewhere around 80 to 100 kids per field trip. Depending upon how long all this goes on, we might, if it's not a field trip thing, we might do some kind of programming for smaller groups. We don't really know what that looks like yet because things are still very much up in the air for everybody. But like I said, we're probably not going to be using our large presentation space for large presentations anytime soon. So, it might be we do something with a smaller group outdoors, keeping everybody 6 feet apart or, whatever the new recommendations will be at that point. And as for the other part to your question, primarily our educational activities are focused here at the Nature Center and on our adjacent preserves, the spring trails and the Peckinpah preserves. But we do participate in events around the community. We also will go into schools, especially a lot of little preschools. We can do some visits with animals, like animal ambassadors, and we'll do little games or activities that kind of reinforce a lesson that they're currently learning. And we're open to doing other activities, but as far as self-sponsored or self-generated activities, we really don't do anything outside of our immediate area.
All right, well, thanks, Jim, for your questions. Another one I got, what has been your biggest challenge since being the director of the Nature Center, Harvey or COVID?
Oof, that's a rough one. Honestly, I would say Harvey. And that was just because, for a while there, there was a question of would we even exist or would we exist in the same way? And that was hard for everyone to deal with and to think about and to, well, okay, if we can't reopen the building, what can we do instead? Or, what kinds of activities can we offer, this and that. Fortunately, the insurance money was there. The political situation was there for us to be able to rebuild and reopen. And, we could stop having those existential crises every other day. That's not to say that COVID has been easy, certainly. But there's not that, are we just not going to exist anymore because of it? We're going to be here. We're going to keep doing stuff. It's just we kind of have to rethink about, what we do. And some of that is a fundamental change. Like I said, no more large group stuff. And we did a lot of large group stuff, whether it was standalone events or activities or field trips, that's definitely all going to have to change, at least for the next year or so. So that is a bit of a challenge, but no, I would say Harvey was the larger task to contend with.
All right, well, thank you. It looks like we don't have any more questions, and it's about almost 4 o'clock. So at this point, I'd just like to thank everyone for participating. And Justin, thank you so much for co-hosting with us on BLC Live this month. It's been really enjoyable to see the Nature Center. Hopefully I can come see it in person at some point soon. And we appreciate the partnership and working with you guys. So thank you again.
Yeah, of
And
course.
if anybody has any other questions, feel free to send me an email. And Justin will be sending that list of natives, and I'll send that out to the group once I get that. But thank you all, and have a great rest of your week.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
All right, bye, everyone.
Bye.